All right, it's Friday night. We're
It's
running a little bit behind schedule,
yeah,
6:15.
but it's Friday night in Vegas. Normally on a Friday night in Vegas, people are having some serious fun, and that's exactly what we're gonna do tonight. Have
That's
some
right.
serious fun talking about the run.
The run. Yeah, yeah. Did you get hit with any lightning last night by any chance?
Actually, we didn't, but it was amazing because we finished our swim practice about 8:30, and
Hmm.
our drive home, we come down a hill, and it was lit. The whole sky was just being lit up the
Okay.
entire time. It was
Wow.
it was a pretty spectacular night. Yeah, I mean, it was looked like it was pretty close to over where you guys were.
Yeah, I think it slid down just even east of us, but we caught the edge of some of it, so it was pretty
It was
intense this
quite a
time.
show, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, no, I love that.
Yeah, that was pretty spectacular. So, John, let's talk about running in triathlon. And really, I want to kind of focus this on the running part of a race, not
Mm-hmm.
like not all the prep work you do, but like the tips that we can give people for running in a triathlon. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to kind of go away from like the shorter distance
Mm-hmm.
because I think a lot of these tips that at least that I have are more for the longer distance.
No, it's good. Okay.
Yeah. Because for me, like a sprint triathlon, grip it and rip it,
Yeah, pretty much.
Whereas, when we get into Olympic distance, there's some things, and then obviously into the half Ironman and the full Ironman.
Hmm.
I think there are some definite things that we could talk about, mistakes we've made along the
Hmm.
way, and
Hmm.
tips that we've learned. And then, John, you brought it up to my attention that the Triathlon Club's Facebook page was lit up with a bunch of ideas that they stole all our thunder
Well,
uh, of our tips, which is great, and we'll talk about some of those as we roll along.
yeah, I almost just feel like we just need to go to the Facebook page and read the comments. Those
Mhm.
are excellent,
Yeah,
excellent tips.
yeah, like seriously, they were so good.
Mhm.
So, John, let me ask you. Let's just start it out. What is your number one tip for
I,
successfully running a triathlon race? Your number one. If someone said, "Give me one tip," what would it be?
oh man. Oh, well, you're putting me on the spot.
Okay,
Okay,
sorry.
well, I'll just say, well,
Yeah.
but you put some context on that. My number one tip would have been bike a lot before the race,
Oh, as far as the prep.
right? It's
Okay.
for the prep, but we want to do more in race tip.
Yeah, we're
Then
assuming you've biked a lot.
all right, so then my number one tip for the run is literally be smart in Trent and T2.
Okay, can you expand on that? Be smart in T2 because
Yep. So
yeah,
you don't want to be wasting time in T2, but now again, we're talking about a 70.3 or an Ironman.
yeah,
But you want to be smart in T2 to get ready for the run. That means put your socks on correctly, make sure you don't have, rocks in your sock, put your shoes on correctly, do your laces the way you want your laces, put on your sunscreen if it's a hot day, sunny day out, get everything ready and be deliberate in T2 so that when you start the run, you're not running off and saying, "Oh, I forgot to do this," or "I left this behind," or "I rushed, I saved 10 seconds in T2, but yet I don't have the nutrition that I had planned to start off with." So be deliberate in T2.
yeah. I couldn't agree more. Be deliberate, but also be what's the word? Efficient,
Yeah.
right? Like you should. Once again, we talked about this before, and obviously this is practice T2, obviously,
Hmm.
but when you get there, everything should be lined up
Yeah.
exactly how you need it, right? So and I know this isn't we're not talking specifically about transition, but have your run stuff set. Like for
Hmm.
me, I have my shoes,
Hmm.
I've got my nutrition that is like literally sitting right beside my shoes that I want for the run. I've got my run belt flipped upside down on
Yep.
my shoes, and I've got and if it's sunny for me, I have a hat or a visor,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that's it. And
Yep.
it's once the helmet comes off and my bike shoes come off, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm in and I'm out.
Oh, I love it. And that's efficient not only in what you're doing, but in what gear you're taking
Yeah.
because you're finding the minimum amount of gear that you need for the run. I'll also add, I like how you described the setup in a transition, but in a race that has your T2 bag.
Different, yeah, different story, right? Yeah.
That's right. You've got to even think about how if you're hanging up the bag or how you're turning the bag over, the day before, are you knotting it or how are you untying it? You got to be thinking about how to get that bag open when you get the bag.
Yeah, such a good tip on that. We actually really probably should do an episode on transitions with bags,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm pretty sure 70.3 Worlds will have bags they always had
Oh,
before.
okay.
And with so many people
Mm-hmm.
in our viewership that are going to 70.3 Worlds, I think we should actually have a specific talk about how to set up your bags, especially with a split transition.
Yeah.
So let's put that down for a couple weeks from now.
Let's jot it down. I like it because you got to do something if it's raining or if it's not raining, how you're going to hang it. There's all those little tricks to
There is a bunch of little
setting that up. And I know several of them because I've made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, you and me both. Yeah, you and me both. Because it's so rare. Like, think about it. It's really only full Ironmans.
Yeah.
And for 70.3s, it's usually only the World Championships
Yeah.
and I've done a ton of 70.3s. I think that's the only time. So in my life, I think I've done it 6 or 7 times with hanging bags.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so far in between that you forget these little things. So I think that'll be a great topic.
Yeah. All right. What's your number one tip?
Man, my number one tip, and this one, I almost don't want to give it out.
Uh-oh.
But I have to, because our job in this is to educate.
That's right. That's our future
And
proofing.
we've talked about it before a little. Run the freaking tangents.
Oh yeah. All right. I like it.
It just blows my mind how people do not run the shortest course possible.
Yeah.
Every triathlon I've ever done, I see, and I don't mean to like brag or anything, but I'm on the pointy end. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm with fast people and they're not running tangents.
Yeah. Right.
And for those of you that don't know, a tangent literally means if literally running the shortest line possible. So if the road is curving to the left, for example, don't run on the right-hand side of the road.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, if there's cones on the left, you got to stay on the right-hand side of the cones. That's fine, but don't run on the right side of the road. And I get it. People get kind of like tired or whatever in their brain, and they're like, "Oh, I always run on the right side of the road." So, and everyone else is running on the right side of the road. And then you'll see me. I'm like 10 meters to the left. I'm the only person out there in the middle of the road, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" I love it. Like, and when I'm racing, I absolutely love watching people not run the tangents, because I'm like, oh, I'm catching you. Like,
that's great.
I'm running less than you.
Oh, funny.
Yeah, my goal when I finish is my watch in a half Ironman says 13 point what 099, not even 13.1. Right. And then I look at other people's, on Strava, you can look at the flybys and other people, and there's a bunch of people running like 13.4. Like, oh, my watch must have been messed up in the GPS. Right. I'm like, no, you were running on the wrong side of the path, the wrong side of the. So yes, that is my number one. And it's not just in triathlon. You see it in marathons, you see it in half marathons, you see it in 10Ks. Everybody just like, oh, well, it's the right side of the road. I got to go to the right, or the left side. Everyone's on the left. I got to go to the left.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I remember a race in Delaware Park in Buffalo, and it was a loop course, and it was a relay, and my team beat someone else's team, and I had my brother running with me, and he was really a relatively new runner. I remember one of the other athletes coming up to him and saying, "Oh, I didn't think you knew how to run the tangents."
Exactly. Well, it's a term that it's a mathematical term.
A tangent is a line that touches a circle one time. 1 point, and so it's a tangent to the circle. So yeah.
And all you have to do is watch. I guess you can't do it now, but watch the Olympics, right? Watch people running around the track. What is the fastest line? The shortest one, right? Like, you want to be like, if you had to race somebody and you had to stay in your lane the entire time, you want the inside lane.
If you all start at the same place.
You all start at the same place, right? Which doesn't necessarily occur. But in the distance races, people have to do that to pass. They have to go out.
That's right.
And you'll notice they don't want to go out on the corners. They want to do it on the straightaways.
Yeah.
Right. And that is smart running.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that people can, I mean, literally gain minutes.
Mm-hmm.
If you run 13.5 instead of 13.1,
Yeah.
that's probably a minute.
Well, now on the to your point on the track, I mean, there is a point where the turn gets too tight, and
Absolutely.
you do
You're
need to
right
be
on that.
careful with that.
Yeah, no,
But
you're absolutely right.
but this is analogous to swimming straight in the swim.
Yep.
You're going to improve your swim time simply by swimming straight. Well, it's the same thing on the run, is run the tangents to have the shortest distance possible for the run.
I'd like to add, because you said that the tight turns. So on a tight turn, like a U-turn on
Mm-hmm.
a course, I go as wide as possible.
Okay, so you
Right?
can.
Well, not as possible, but I want to be 4 or 5 feet away and end
Mm-hmm.
up 4 or 5 feet away so I can keep my momentum.
Mm-hmm.
Because it takes a lot of energy to slow down and speed up again. So you do on a tight turn, you're absolutely right. You don't necessarily want to take the tightest possible turn possible.
So that being said, I'm just curious, when you're training for a race, do you practice doing the U-turns? Do you have U-turns in your regular run course?
I don't.
Yeah.
Well, that's not necessarily true, because when I do, for example, if I'm doing intervals,
Yep, yep,
I'll have a U-turn at the top of a
yep,
hill. Or at the bottom.
yep.
So I don't think about it like that, but maybe it's a good idea to actually think about how I approach those.
Hmm.
That's
I do that, and I have one specific area that I do it at, where I'll come up, I'll run to the turnaround, and then I'll walk. And what I'm doing is I'm actually practicing. Okay, maybe I'm in the half or in the marathon. I'm at this turnaround. I got to walk for a bit, but then I have to start running again.
Yeah.
And I really believe you got to train your brain to be able to get out of it. Oh, walking is so comfortable. You've got to start running again. And so I try to work that into my runs, because I walk during the marathon. I wish I didn't have to, but
Oh,
I do.
no, I think that's a very common thing.
Hmm.
I think more people walk in an Ironman than don't.
Yep. All
Awesome.
right, so we got T2, we got run bag even, or just set up, being deliberate and efficient in T2. We've got run the tangents. What's your next one?
Oh, that's your turn.
Oh, okay. Well,
I got one if you want. I got it written down.
I got my list here, and again, it's a little out of sync with us, but that's okay. Shoes, I gotta say shoes.
Yeah, well, you're a shoe guy,
I am.
shoe researcher.
You've got to know which shoes to wear, and I also have laces down too. And that's a little bit with that goes along with T2. You've got to know what your lacing structure is for a 70.3 or for an Ironman. Do you like elastic laces? Is that okay, or do you use the regular cloth laces, or what is? These are little details, but you've got to have those shoes being comfortable, and they got to be easy to get on, and then be able to tighten however you do it.
And keep that tight and consistently. So I've
Yeah.
talked to people about this, where they have elastic laces and they just pull them, and then it gets really tight on the top of their foot, especially
Hmm.
like it's the tibialis anterior tendon. It gets really snug there, but it's loose in the forefoot, and then they have to stop and redo their lace. This is
Hmm.
something that should have been practiced, and exactly how far to pull the thing. And yeah, you're exactly right, because there's nothing worse than like halfway through a run, oh man, my foot is really hurting on the top, and it's
Yeah.
because of the laces. Yeah.
Well, and there's a pro triathlete that got DQ'd because of that. I don't know if you remember, it was Cam Brown who was running, and his shoes there was something about his shoes, but he changed his shoes out with his son ultimately, who was a spectator, and someone caught that, and he ended up getting DQ'd for getting outside assistance. So,
And as well, he should have.
yeah.
Right. Now, if you're an age grouper finishing in 14 hours, no one's going to care.
Yeah.
But if you're a pro and going to win win a race, yeah.
That's right. That's right.
No, you're exactly right. And then the other thing I'm going to add to the shoes on race day, like you just mentioned, is the right shoe.
Yeah.
For the course,
Mm-hmm.
right? So is there some trail in the course? Is there,
Yep.
when we were in Oregon, there was a lot of gravel in the course. I think that makes a difference. Is it going to be very wet?
Mm-hmm.
I know you guys, you and your research group, you did some work on when shoes get wet.
Yeah, yeah, no, that was really neat. We had a student do her thesis on that and was able to see one, the shoes up, you get wet, they get heavier, so
Yep.
they're going to be harder to run in just from a sake of being heavier.
Yep.
They do lose a little bit of energy return, meaning that spring back that the shoe might have. Now, we only mechanically tested the shoes. So what we want to do next is actually put people in the shoes and then have them run in dry shoes and wet shoes and hopefully not get blisters. So
Yeah, that's the thing though. If you have shoes that maybe are the upper is more absorbent,
mm-hmm.
that might not be the best choice, especially if it's going to be really wet.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, and that leads to socks.
Yep.
And I think that goes right along with the same categories, making sure that you've been practicing running in the socks you're going to use on race day, and the socks have to be easy to get on. And if they're compression socks, you've got to practice getting those compression socks on in T2, because that can be a little stressful with your feet a little wet and sweaty, and trying to get compression socks is not always easy.
So I will give the tip. I'll add this. In most races, your feet end up getting wet because you're pouring water on your head. You're water all over yourself. People are spraying you with squirt guns sometimes. So I would actually suggest that you actually practice running with completely wet shoes.
That's good.
Like maybe just do a 5K, but pour water all over your shoes first, or put them in the sink.
Yep.
And completely wet, because if it's new to you, it's going to be weird, right? And let's say you just add two ounces to a shoe. I mean, John, you've done enough work in biomechanics of shoes. 2 ounces is significant.
It is.
Right, and that could change your running economy quite significantly.
It's either going to slow you down or it's going to make it harder to run the pace that you want to run at, meaning more calories. So.
And ultimately less economy, right? Like utilizing more oxygen.
That's right.
And more calories. So I do suggest that to people. It's not the most comfortable thing to do, but maybe on a brick run, right? Especially on a brick run, maybe you're only going to go 2 miles. Well, get your shoes completely soaked and run those 2 miles.
I have not tried that for a training run.
Challenge accepted.
I'm going to do that.
Yep.
Although I did swim today and then I ran home after the swim, so that's
that counts.
That's a little bit.
Okay, so my next one is keep as cool as you possibly can.
Oh yeah.
Temperature and running, on the bike, even in hot weather, you can stay relatively cool. Pouring water on yourself. We've talked about this before. You get that evaporative cooling, you get the convection. That does not happen to nearly as much on the run. So what can you do to stay cool? Ice, water, right? We talked about before, putting ice in your top, putting ice in your pockets of your, whatever, ice in a hat. I was watching the women's marathon in the Olympics, and the lady was trying to fiddle with an ice bag to get ice in her hat. And whatever it is, you got to do it. I love the, Patrick Langa with his sewn into his tri-top pockets inside for sponges. Right. So literally he had a spot inside that he could put the sponges into his tri-suit.
Yeah.
And those little things, if you can keep even a half a degree cooler, once they were talking about running economy, you are going to be more economical.
Yep. Well, and I love the sponge idea and the pockets for that. When Coeur Lane was coming up and it being so hot, even though I didn't do it, I was still paying attention to what people were planning on. And, I always knew about, putting ice in stockings.
Yep.
And then, putting the stocking full of ice inside something. Well, the stockings are a little awkward to try to work with. But someone said they use tube socks. And I'm like, oh, that's a good one. I have to get some tube socks because they obviously have a bigger opening, easier to get ice into.
But how are you going to carry your tube socks on the run?
Well, full of ice.
Where are you going to get the ice?
Well, from the aid station.
So you're going to carry your tube socks in your tri-suit somewhere?
Oh yeah.
And you're going to be like, hey, fill up my sock.
You got a little tail going. It's like flag football.
I mean, I love the idea, but I'm like just thinking of the logistics of carrying tube socks around.
You
But
know, if I think, okay, so to your
so
point, what's important is you've got to know the benefit, the possible benefit versus the cost. And
exactly,
so, you know, a Coeur d'Alene where they were projecting it to be well over 100 degrees,
then it might be worth it.
then it's worth it. Yeah. But if it's, you know, if we're going to do St. George and it's maybe 80, you know,
Yeah.
85, then you've got to say, well, maybe it's not worth it to go to that level of cooling. So it is that you do need to analyze that.
So I also like the idea of using arm sleeves,
Mm-hmm.
the
Yep.
really thin white ones,
Yep.
and putting ice in the arm sleeve.
Mm-hmm.
Because your forearm, there's a lot of
Yep.
vascularity in the forearm. So I do like that one as well in really
Mm-hmm.
hot races is using that because they as long as they're wet
Mm-hmm.
and you're not in a humid environment,
Mm-hmm.
I think that those cooling sleeves can actually have some benefit.
Yep.
If you're in a very humid environment, they are not going to help you
Yep.
unless you have ice in them.
Right. And could almost make it worse.
It almost make it
Oh.
worse. Yeah.
So yeah, so along with that, I would say sunscreen, especially in the type of racing we do out here in the Southwest.
Yeah.
That,
You know, there's some there. I was actually reading an article about maybe putting sunscreen on the night before, even
mm,
have some benefit.
hmm
So like you actually put on, especially the areas like where your tri shirt or it's not going to be covering even your face. There was I can't remember the brand, but there was a brand that specifically I think for this, where you could do it the night before, then you do it again in the morning,
hmm
and supposedly it works that you don't actually have to put it on maybe in T2.
Yeah. Mm.
So who knows? So that's it.
All
That is
right.
that is a good one.
Well, let's keep going with some
Yeah.
cool tips. Some cool tips. You haven't measured. You haven't mentioned one of your favorite ones, fabric color.
Well, it's on my list,
Oh, is it?
but
Okay.
that's not just for the run. That
Yeah.
also plays into the bike. But
Yeah.
yes,
So,
fabric color. I love the fact that Christian Blumenfeld won the Olympic triathlon wearing sheer white,
yeah. Yeah.
and because the Norwegians in particular, I've been following their training. They've done a ton of heat work.
They have.
They
They
have
have.
not left a
Yep.
stone unturned as far as
Hmm
heat. Because you
Yep.
think about like a guy from Norway winning an Olympic triathlon in Tokyo,
Yep.
they did a ton of heat work. And
Yep.
the fact they came out in those white tops and white everything, I was like, these are some smart people.
They were doing a lot of work, and I know some folks that were working with them, and it was pretty impressive what they were doing.
Yeah.
So here's another one along the same line, menthol.
Oh yeah. Menthol. Yeah.
And
Great
I
one.
actually ordered and have some menthol, and I'm thinking of trying that for my next hot race. And I tried practicing with it, and menthol is what, aftershave or mouthwash, and but yeah, I put it right on the back of my neck, and uh, but
Even menthol mints,
yeah, menthol mints.
even in your mouth can give you a feeling of feeling cooler. But menthol on your skin will evaporate. You're right.
That's it, right.
Yeah.
And actually, I did use it for Hawaii 70.3
Oh, okay.
and I
A
did
spray
learn
or a cream
a
or
cream, yeah, and I did learn you need to go use the porta potty before you put the menthol on.
oh sure. So my only concern with putting stuff like that on is will that counteract the sunscreen or will that maybe give
Yeah,
you, I just don't know how that
yeah,
works. And
right,
the last thing I want to do is put something on that cooks me,
yeah,
like some kind of oil or something that
right.
that always concerns me with that
Yeah,
kind
you
of
don't
stuff.
want something to magnify
Yeah,
the heat.
yeah,
So, no, that's
love
good.
it. Okay, what's your next tip?
All right, well, let's see. I gotta go in order. Mine are not in the same order as this. Well, okay, well, I gotta go back to training then. Do some runs in late afternoon or evening.
Yeah. Well, especially for an Ironman.
Yep, especially for an Ironman.
Yeah,
Yep.
because your brain, yeah, you're right. Your brain starts to recognize that this is the time we're running.
hmm
It's okay. The sun's going down.
hmm
Yeah, especially in the late fall races, right? Like you think about like Ironman Arizona.
hmm
Gets dark at what 4:45. Is
Yeah, right. So you've
that what
got to
we're
get
getting at
used
with
to that.
that? getting used to that?
I have actually been spreading my workouts out more and trying to use more of the afternoon for some workouts. So it's different though, because, working out in the afternoon and then getting up in the morning, now you've
Going
just got a
day.
shorter period of time. Yeah, you've got to, I figure you got to be pretty careful with the recovery in between and making sure you are getting enough recovery.
No, you're absolutely correct there. There's some good evidence. We'll go down this road at one point too, talking about the mitigation of injury by actually training in the afternoon rather than the morning, in particular running, because your body's at the warmest
Mm-hmm.
in the afternoon, and you've done stuff all day. You've walked around. Your joints, the synovial fluid in the joints is a little bit more less viscous, and
Mm-hmm.
so there is some good evidence with that. And even some people are saying that, maybe if someone was to go for a world record in a certain run, like the breaking 2, to
Yeah.
do it around 2 or 3 in the afternoon might actually be the best time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good. I love that one.
All right,
So
what do you got
that's the
next?
only problem with that one though is in a 70.3. I want to be done by noon,
Yeah,
right?
that's
So,
true.
but once again, maybe running at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is one that I've struggled with, and I wish I didn't struggle with it so much, is to go out easy.
Uh, that's in our list on Facebook.
Yeah. It's so hard to get off the bike for me. Like, you got this cadence going, 180 cadence spinning on the bike. My run cadence is actually very close to my bike cadence.
Oh, interesting.
And so I think that for me, it's great, but then I have a hard time in the beginning of the run controlling my cadence.
Yeah.
And I'm a cadence-based runner. Like, some people, they get faster by increasing their stride length. I get faster by increasing my cadence more than my stride length.
Yeah.
And so I really have a hard time in that first 2 miles. Well, sorry, the first half mile feels horrible because it feels horrible. But then I look at my splits and it's always like my first mile is the fastest.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to do because, we've talked about this before. When you start getting your splits, I don't know about you, I get splits every half a kilometer on my watch. And I see this time and I'm like, oh man, it's my day.
Yeah, right.
We've talked about this before. Guess what? It's never your day.
Yeah.
Right? It never is.
Yeah.
Right? You are what you've trained.
Yeah.
And when your watch pops up and says, oh man, like this is going to be a PR after the first K.
That's right.
It's not going to be a PR.
You're in a danger zone.
You're in a danger zone. So, I mean, for my next race, I'm really, really thinking the best thing for me to do is to do my very best, and I've never done it, is to negative split.
Nice.
In a 70.3. And I'm working on a run plan right now. I'm training this way to do this.
Yep.
But it's hard to get off that bike and go slow.
It is. I actually just read a paper on looking at what's happening in the last portion of the run of a triathlon. And it's just as most of us would predict, you are going slower. And so that's a good challenge to see if you can break that pacing sort of mindset of starting out as fast as you can and then just trailing off near the end.
Yeah, I really think that if I could take some of my triathlon races, even the ones I've done really well in, and take 10 seconds per K off, could I gain more at the end? Like, would it be longer? Would I have a longer time of that sustained pace before my pace started to decrease?
There's a lot of anecdotal talk about that every minute you're running faster in the beginning, you're going to end up paying that price later on.
And it's paying more than a minute, right?
Yeah, that's right. Much more than a minute. So because you could potentially be walking. But I do have to add in, you do need to allow opportunity for that magic to happen. And sometimes that
you do. You absolutely do. But then why can that magic not happen in the back half?
That's right.
Right. Like, I've never done a 70.3 where the last 5K, I was like, man, I'm just feeling so good.
That's right. Right.
Like, I could run through a wall right now. I've never finished a race like that.
Oh.
right? But nor do I don't want to finish a race like that. I want to finish a race like, not like Christian Blumenfeld, but I want to finish a race and have nothing left.
Well, okay, but we're mentioning St. George a few times here. St. George is a downhill for
I know it is.
that last part into the finish line. I remember when I did
It's scaring the
the
heck out of me.
previous 70.3, I really enjoyed that last run coming down because you're trying to push it. It hurts, but at the same time, that downhill, even if it's a 1 or 2% grade, that really adds to your speed.
Yeah, the problem is with 70.3 worlds is the downhill is way steeper
Mm-hmm.
closer to the finish.
Okay.
Because it's the 2 loop course, and if I don't know if you've really looked at that,
I haven't.
that downhill is so steep,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a K to the finish from the steep downhill, and you do it twice, obviously.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
a 2 looper, but I'm doing things right now as far as like pushing the downhill running, so I can actually survive the first time to do it again the second time.
Yeah, because it does that. It does accumulate, and I think we talked about when I did Hawaii 70.3, just running on that
The ups
golf
and
course with
downs.
its up and downs, ended up having to walk some of the downhill parts just because it was so painful.
Yeah.
All right, but I want to go back to the stride frequency part because there is some really good research about exiting T2 and what happens to stride frequency, and it is faster. It is at the highest as you're exiting T2 typically. And then it will come back down to what you probably would normally run. But initially, people are, and this was looking at some pretty high-end athletes in transition. They were coming out at a much higher stride frequency.
Was there a stride length decreased? Because I know I feel like
Yeah, yep. Stride length will decrease and stride frequency will go up. Exactly.
yeah, and I feel that. I definitely feel that
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking, I look at my data even, and I can see like my cadence is super high, and
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously some of the data we can look at even can factor out and see what your stride length is. And my stride length for that first K is always less,
Yep.
especially at St. George, because you have to run uphill that first K.
Yeah, right. Yes. So that comes back to you got to practice those runs up and run down. That's good. All right.
Yeah. Okay. Is it me or you? It's me, right? No, that was
Yeah,
you. That was me. That was, yeah, in long course, go out easy.
go out. Oh, okay. Then I'll go with have a plan in aid stations
Yeah.
because, especially on the second loop, a lot of times those aid stations get really cluttered with people and clogged up. And there's some people who are just sitting there, at that point, maybe they're, getting the pretzels or getting that. And
Or
you've
just
got to
the standing still. Yep.
That's right. And you either need to have a plan to say, okay, I'm going to walk through the aid station, but you still need to, navigate around people, or you're going to run through or whatever you're going to do, but you have to have a plan and not get caught up into what everybody else is doing.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's hard. Like you can
Mm-hmm.
have the perfect plan in the world, but
Yeah.
it's happened to all of us. You're coming into an aid station and you're just kind of jogging in, and someone in front of you stops.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've had people like, I'm
Yeah.
about to grab a water, and they get a water and they stop, stand still, drink their water, and I hit them.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
if you're running behind somebody and you're, let's say you're a meter or two behind them,
Yep.
and they instantly stop, and you're looking for a water,
Yeah.
like you're right. So sometimes even the best plans
Yeah.
can fail.
Mm-hmm.
But if you truly are in a situation where you can't make it to the next aid station, or you think it's going to be detrimental to you, it's better to stop.
Yep.
Get what you need, especially in long course like Ironman, especially in Ironman,
Yeah.
right?
And especially if the environmental conditions
Exactly.
are, such that you need to get fluid or fuel at that aid station.
And because if you miss it, like let's say you just blow it, right? Like you try to get water, you can't get it, you miss the next one, and you're like, oh, I'll make the next aid station. You're going to be thinking about that for the next mile.
That's right.
Instead of the race in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that one. And the nice thing about Ironman branded races and is that in general they have longer aid stations, and it's consistent, right?
Yeah.
It goes water, Gatorade, I don't know, Coke, Red Bull, water again, Gatorade again, ice. Like there's a food kind of in the middle, and it's consistent one to the next. So once you get through the first one, you pretty much have a good idea of where everything's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do like that.
All right, what do you got?
That is it. That is a good one. Man, I hate stealing it from our Facebook page, but seriously, like Vanessa Cook.
I
Another big
like
one.
it. Yeah,
Smile.
that is a good one, and that's actually been in some research
Yep.
in terms of smiling. Go ahead, you tell it.
No, you're good with this. Like, you know this as well as I do.
Smiling can make your running economy better.
Yep.
It's so weird, but just what the thought is that positive affect can really influence how you're running and just sort of relax you, and it's going to you won't need to use as much oxygen to run the same speed. It will be easier to run that speed.
Now, it is hard to smile all race long. I gotta be
It
honest with
is.
you. So for me, I'll actually have points on the course
Yeah.
that I know are kind of pinch points.
Yeah.
So usually they're hills, right?
Yeah.
So I know that this hill is the soul sucker,
Yeah.
right? So I know at the bottom of the hill, it's in my plan to smile.
I like it.
And there's some interesting, there's some pictures of me like completely grimacing at points in races, but then I'm like fake, this huge fake smile, but it works. Honestly, nothing gets you to a hill faster than a smile.
Mm-hmm. I love it. And that's what I think we're going to enjoy St. George for so much, is because there's going to be so many people that we're going to know while we're racing. You're going to be really
be smiling, seeing people. Like, that's another thing that actually there's some good evidence of this one too. Of someone saying your name, someone cheering specifically for you.
Yeah.
Actually makes your running economy better as well.
It does. And actually, we had a student do her thesis on that.
Yep.
And she did her thesis on not telling anyone anything while they ran, and they measured running economy. And then the next condition was while they're running the same speed, telling them, oh, you're doing great. Oh, your technique's fantastic. This type of stuff that really had nothing to do with what they were doing. And their running economy was better. We are very, I don't know, maybe that makes us vain, but it really, those things do help during the race. So yeah, sometimes you're like, oh, don't lie. I know I don't look good, but you got to get that positive affect in your brain, and that is what you're really trying to do in order to improve your run.
So in Oregon, I was wearing my Team Canada shorts on the run and on the bike, and I came around a corner and somebody noticed and they said, "Oh, go Team Canada," and I instantly lifted.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know who this person is at all, but you recognize I'm wearing Team Canada shorts. Like, that is so awesome that you said that. And I'm like, okay, like, yeah, good. And for the next 30 seconds, I was like, huh? Because at first I couldn't figure out how they figured it out that I was from Canada. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fun. And so it is like little things like that. So I think you're right at St. George. The only sad thing about St. George for me is it's not an out and back run like it traditionally is. Right? So we're not going to have that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
St. George, I usually it's so great to have those out and backs because you see everybody, and you could potentially see people multiple times the way they have the traditional course. So that is going to be one of the things that I'm going to miss. So it is what it is. But you're right on all those psychological.
It makes a difference.
Even having your family, if your friends or family are coming out, this is going to be the hardest point of the course. To have them at that point, it does help you.
Well, and I'll even say, and I don't know any research on this, but I think it's actually, it would be neat to do a project on this. I actually think that when people are supporting you electronically and that they're tracking you, I think that actually helps us as well. I really do, even though we don't see it, but we may be thinking about it and just trying to envision, oh, someone's saying good job or what have you, and that helps.
No, I agree. There's a lot of psychological components to running, in particular running, And I don't know if it would be the same, or if it's the same in just a pure running race, because it's not the same level of mental fatigue at that point,
Yeah, right.
right? Because in the finish, or in the run portion of a 70.3 or an Ironman, there's a lot of mental fatigue that goes
Oh,
into it, and anything you can get that stimulates you mentally is a positive.
no, I love it. And now that you've mentioned the F word, I do need to, you know, we talk about fatigue, and in general, we know what that is general tiredness. I was fatigued before we started here and what have you. But another way to think about fatigue is it's a perception of how much more you can do.
Yeah.
And that just changes sort of the perspective of what fatigue is. Now, there is true fatigue, and then exhaustion is where you just can't keep going.
Right.
And I don't know if you saw, someone posted their video of finishing at nationals, and she was done. You know, it was the humidity that really turned her inside out, and she ended up having to crawl prior to getting across the finish line. She still got up and ran across it. So Becky, just fantastic,
Awesome.
yeah, inspiring moment there. But yeah, fatigue. So these are the things that we're talking about, is getting that mind so that you can perceive that you can go more. And so all these little tips and tricks with the psychology part really do come into play. All right, now I'm just going to say we're going to watch our time. We've got a lot of comments that we're going to have to get to. So I got a couple more quirky ones, but then I
Yep.
think we need to go through some of the comments that people are putting in on the live show here.
Yep. Perfect. So John, you got a couple more quirky ones? Go
Well,
ahead.
I'll say gum.
See, I've never raced with gum, but I train with gum all the time.
Yeah, I actually do it, especially here in the Southwest, because of how dry the air is. And to have some gum, or I carry a couple extra pieces with me on long races, just to be able to keep avoid that cotton mouth type of feel.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree.
Okay, then I got to go with one more here. Oh, do you got
No,
one
go
there?
ahead. Go ahead.
Um, Spinning the last part of the bike segment.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah.
You gotta finish your bike in a way that you're starting to think about your run already.
Yeah. This is not the time, in my opinion, for low cadence, high torque.
No,
The time for high cadence, low torque.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would even take it out 10 miles on an Ironman. And that last 10 miles is you're starting to think you got to prep for the run,
Yeah.
prep your
Agreed.
legs for the run, and you're not trying to make up time. Well, I know some people like to think, I want to be able to pass people in that last segment, but really I think you need to be looking at the run even that far out.
Yeah. And that's actually was going to be kind of my last one, is to be thinking about the run from the gun, like
Yeah,
from
that's
the
right.
beginning of the swim,
Hmm.
because long course triathlon, especially in age group, is all about the run.
Yeah.
It really is. Yes, I know bike is important, but when you look at it, and you look at 100 people in an age group, and you start to really look at where people finish,
Hmm.
it's overwhelmingly dictated by the run.
Yeah.
Whether that is because you've overbiked, underbiked, whatever the
Hmm.
case may be. So if you've underbiked and you have a good run, or
Hmm.
overbiked and had a poor run, or even in the swim, I don't even, energy, whatever it is you're doing, in my mind, has to be run centric, right?
Yeah.
So in some of the comments people were putting, like, about eating a lot on the bike or getting your nutrition on the bike, that's to have a successful run.
Hmm.
You talked about the spinning the legs in the run, or on the bikes to get to the run. I think that you need to be really thinking about what can I do before to have a successful run
Hmm.
during the race.
Yep.
And in the back of my mind, like, I know I could ride my bike harder,
Hmm.
but I don't because I want to run, right? Now I got to be honest with you. I don't know if you remember, but I raced the Aqua Bike World Championships
Yeah. Yeah.
in Denmark,
Hmm.
and totally different world
Hmm.
to just swim and
Hmm.
bike with reckless abandon.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
it's like I am all in, and I didn't have to have a rolling buffet, right?
No.
Like, I just needed enough energy for the bike. I wasn't trying to give myself energy for the next 2 hours.
Yeah.
And what a different experience it is. Like if you've never done a long course aqua bike, this is everyone out there, consider it. It's pretty dang fun. Like this was a 75-mile bike. So it was a, I think it was a 4K swim and a 75-mile bike.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
It was so fun to do.
Yeah.
Also, it's fun to do because I knew I didn't have to run. Right. But the tactics are different.
Totally.
Right. And so that made me appreciate more what I do normally, like in a triathlon, to prepare for the run. And all these thoughts need to start like literally as the gun goes off. Like
well,
we don't kick too much swimming, so we don't fatigue our legs when we
That's
go,
right.
or use energy we don't want to burn. Right. So that's my last tip I'm going to give tonight is start thinking about the run right in the beginning.
Well, and I love it. But what I like is you're still thinking of this as a triathlon. Yep. And so people may hear, oh, it's just running. And that's not what you're saying. We know that you're going to run about 5 to 6% slower on a triathlon distance, compared to just running it straight out. But to get to that 5 to 6% slower, to get to that level, you still need to do all these things that you're talking about in terms of pacing the swim correctly, pacing the bike correctly, and then you're set up for a successful run. So no, that is great advice. It's a very, treating it as a triathlon.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, John, you want to start reading off some of these comments?
I think so. Yeah, these are good. Okay, so I got Bob here saying, please talk about bike pacing to optimize run performance. I think we just touched on that, and it is so important to be able to have the right bike pacing because it's not like your aqua bike where it's just all out. Yeah, that's a different event. You need to bike knowing you're gonna run, and that's the triathlon.
And there's formulas for this. They're pretty much they're readily available formulas, but those are making an assumption that your training was basically spot on.
Yep.
Right. So just a quick thing to answer Bob's question. Somewhere in the literature basically says somewhere between 80 and 85% of your FTP for a 70.3 and between 70 and 80%, depending on you and your history, for an Ironman. Good. Is that pretty much what you have, John?
Yep. I like that. All right. So Rick's got socks in a race. Why? And then
because we don't have old feet like Rick.
he's got some good thick skin on his feet, I think.
Yeah, he must be walking around in Las Vegas, in the summer, just on the asphalt. And
yeah,
I've tried it. I do it in sprint racing, and I've tried it in Olympic racing, but I don't want to take the risk in a 70.3.
I used to race in without socks, but now I got tender feet now, I guess, but I do put socks on now. And I actually started putting on some compression socks for iron distance, but that's only because you get a little bit more time in T2 to try to set that up. So, but I like it. Oh, sorry.
You have more time in T2 and do they
sprint race?
A hard time. Do they pause? Do they pause it?
The amount of time in the sprint race in T2 should be as short as humanly possible. The amount of time on an Ironman T2, all right, you get a little bit of wiggle room.
Not a lot. Really though?
Yeah, not a lot, but you do. Now we do have a friend who did lose she still got a Kona slot, but she lost the position by 1 second.
Okay, so let me ask you this, John. The year you qualified for Kona, how much room for error did you have?
I think I did actually have pretty good. Okay. I was third. And I got the last spot, but I think the next person, I'd have to go back and look. I want to say it was maybe 7 minutes back.
Because I hear horror stories of, like you were just talking about your friend Taylor Lane, where they missed a Kona spot by 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And to me, well, that's T2.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, okay, but here's the deal: is that there's times that you do need to take. You got to collect yourself.
Agreed.
And yeah, if you go back and you look at that and say, oh, but I shouldn't have taken that 20 seconds to whatever. But that 20 seconds may have gained you time down.
I agree.
So it's this really weird balance that you've got to strike. So I
wish I had feet of steel and I didn't need to wear socks. because Rick is absolutely right. Like
Yeah.
if you could get away without wearing socks, especially we talked about your feet getting wet, the socks do take up can take up a lot of fluid. Yes, I aspire to have feet and skin strong enough. I just don't know how to do it. Maybe I need a pumice stone to pumice.
And toenails that
Yeah.
can withstand it. Okay, but now I like his next comment. Wet shoes, be sure to use Vaseline in hot spots, including the ball of your foot. And that's a really good tip. I'm surprised one of us mentioned Vaseline. Vaseline on the feet. I actually put Vaseline under the arms. Anywhere where there's skin rubbing over skin down the crotch area, that can really help.
So in athletic training, we have a thing that's pretty ubiquitous, and it's called skin lube.
Mm-hmm.
And it is even better than Vaseline.
So is it? Oh.
Pro tip, you can buy it. You can get it on Amazon. It's really cheap. Skin lube.
Yeah.
It's just once it warms up, it doesn't get, Vaseline once it warms up gets kind of fluidy. Yeah. It actually kind of maintains itself a little bit better. Okay. But I like before a race, I'm putting skin lube in my shoes, like especially my blisters tend to come in my heels. Mm-hmm. So I put the skin lube there. Yep. Yeah, so I definitely do that.
When I do my sprint races without socks, I put the Vaseline inside the shoes, as opposed to even on the feet at that point. So the shoes are already prepped with Vaseline. All right, so let's see. Now Rick also says multiple sunscreen applications before the race works. So yeah, you want the skin to absorb some of it. And yeah, you also during the race, I mean, you've got to keep that sun off you on those really hot races. The sauna, Norwegians also use the sauna a lot.
Yes, they do, and they did. And if you look at their race prep stuff, not only were they sitting in the sauna, they were riding bikes in the sauna. They were running in the sauna. Mm-hmm. Smart stuff. And I'd heard, I didn't see anything about it on a podcast saying that they were actually swimming in like hot springs.
Wow.
Because the water was like in the 80s. Oh. It's hard to find, not in Vegas. You can find a pool. Go down to municipal pool in the summer. It's like 90 degrees.
Yeah. Well, Lake Mead is.
Or even Lake Mead, right? Yeah. So you could do that here, but in Norway, it might be tough to find some warm water other than a hot spring to swim in. Yeah.
But there's a lot of good research on the sauna, and it's really a blood volume increaser, and getting the brain used to operating at higher core temps if you're doing the exercise.
We talked about this before. Or just do your bike tech after your Sunday ride in Las Vegas in your garage.
Yeah.
And it works just as good.
Mm-hmm. And we've got Dr. Barnes chiming in here, and he says sunscreen first and 30 minutes prior to exposure. So again, getting that sunscreen on before. Yeah. That's good. And I always, I like to get my sunscreen on well before the swim. Yeah. Because I like to get my hands clean. I don't want any sunscreen on my hands. So.
Yeah, and definitely don't put the sunscreen all over yourself and then go onto your bike with your handlebars and get it.
That's true.
That's something I know. Even like for like my ride, sometimes I'll be like, oh dang it, I got sunscreen all over my fingers. Like I'm out on a ride and I'll put some sunscreen on, and it gets onto the grips. Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right. So now this is an age group issue or comment. The oldest Ironman runners always run in the dark and have some good lighting systems. That's a really good tip. Yeah. That depending on when you start, which may be later, based on your age, then you're going to automatically be ending up, coming in the dark for an iron distance type of race. So
especially in those fall, like we said, Arizona in particular.
Yeah.
You got to be in the top 200 to not finish in the dark.
Yep. And having lighting systems, or even thinking about clothing, that would be another one we're going to have to do at some point, maybe for Ironman St. George next year. Yep. Talk about special needs, yep. What to put in there for potentially changing temperatures throughout the race. One needs to do some negative split track and or road work to see how slow one needs to go early. Yeah.
That's what one is doing right now. One is actually doing this, where they're going easy for the first couple of miles or longer, and then picking up the pace in the second half. That's what one is doing right now.
So I've actually started doing some of that as well, but I've been doing thirds. So I do my run in easy third, middle third faster, last third faster.
Yeah.
Same concept.
And it's interesting, right? Like there's some controversy on this as far as training. Whether if you're going to do like a tempo run, whether you should do the tempo part in the beginning or the end.
Mm-hmm.
And different coaches have different philosophies on this. Some people say you should do your tempo in the beginning because you're freshest and you're going to have the best form.
Yep.
But I'm thinking in a triathlon, especially long course, it's more about holding form the best that you can when you're fatigued.
Yeah.
You might
Yeah.
be doing it in the back.
That's
So,
right.
or maybe it's mixing it up, doing some of
Mm-hmm.
this and of that. I mean, we talked about it before. The body needs to have different stimuli
Yeah.
to, to respond to, and so
That's
doing
right.
both might be best. What else we got there?
All right, Rick adds, having a plan for transitions and aid stations is an essential strategy. And I like that because Rick is the consummate planner. And I would think that he has some really good plans going into obviously transitions, but then also the aid stations, which is often overlooked.
Yep.
Chrissy Wellington was a chronic smiler as a comment.
I
didn't know
that's
that.
true.
Yeah, I knew
That's
what
that's true.
Kipchoge is, so.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
look at Kipchoge. I mean, he's smiling the entire time.
Yeah.
And I think it's a fake smile, like mine.
All right, Rick adds fatigue. Reset your focus to the next aid station or even visual landmark. When you get there, then reset. That is really great advice. I mean, you need to shorten that distance that you're trying to cover.
Yep.
And you got to just have these little goals. It may even get to 10 feet, but you've got to reset. And sometimes you use the porta potty to reset. You go in there and sort of get in this enclosure. For those of us who have struggled at times with an Ironman, it's
I was crying in an Ironman in 2014 in a porta potty. It happened.
and then you come out and you say, okay, I'm out. Now I get going again. And so yeah, I think this is really good advice that your visual landmark, what you're focusing on, really reset that and just try to make those goals really small.
Okay, I was saving one
Oh,
for
okay.
the very end. Is there more?
Yeah, there's just a couple more. Let me get through. Bob says thanks. Rick, the difference between a too fast-paced bike and an optimal pacing in an Ironman is about 10 minutes for those who finish in around 10 to 13 hours.
Okay.
That's good. Dr. Barnes says, so skin lube, sock, then shoe?
Oh, this is a good one.
Ah,
For me, it goes shoe, skin lube on the shoe,
yeah.
then sock, then foot.
Okay, so you don't put it on your foot.
No.
Ah,
Because
interesting.
I don't want to waste time. I'm not putting skin lube on my foot because if I swim, it's going to come off, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not wasting time in T1. I'm going to have it in my shoe. Yeah. Good
Great.
question.
Okay, T1 and T2, Rick says, nobody finishes a race and says, if I just would have spent more time in transitions.
How true is that?
I like that.
Yeah, I love that one.
Yeah, that's your free speed area.
It is.
Free, but I do hang on to, you've got to just be deliberate. You don't want to rush,
Yeah. No,
but you
don't
don't
rush.
want to be,
Be
you don't want to
deliberate.
be wasting time in there. But yeah, that's, you want to keep moving forward. All right, you said you've got to,
Okay, this is my final one.
okay.
When all else fails, you lie to yourself.
I like it.
I've lied to myself so many times. Hey, Ted, if you can, just this last 5K, if you can do this in this last 5K, I'm going to give you the next 2 weeks off.
There you go.
And I never do. I just lie to myself. Hey, when you finish this, you're going to go get a big bowl of ice cream.
Oh, ice cream. Yeah.
And I may or may not do it, but at the time, whatever it takes to lie to yourself,
Yeah.
it may be true.
Yeah.
It may not be, but the big one is like, hey, you finish this and you do this, you go under this time, I'm going to give you 2 weeks off. That's my big one. And I've never succumbed to that lie because I always get back to training.
Oh, I love
Eventually,
it.
I'm gonna like do it, and then I'm gonna say, okay, now 2 weeks off.
Yeah. Well, it speaks to the point of just that mental focus and what you're trying to do. You're just trying to get your mind
Yeah.
saying it's okay to keep going. And so that is a great tip. I love it.
And I
All
got
right.
I got another one that was just it came through at the mind. This is something that I learned from a pro triathlete a long time ago. It was on a podcast. Was you were talking about compartmentalizing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for me at when I get to mile 8.5, I got 5 miles to go.
Yep.
My kind of typical route around my house is 5 miles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
So then I just like, oh, this is just imagine you're
Same
just
thing.
getting out of your house.
Yep.
You know you're going to go around this corner, this corner, this corner, this corner, this
Mm-hmm.
corner, and then you're home.
Mm-hmm.
And I will mile 8 is a good one for me. And then when I get to 5K left, same thing. It's like, well, how many times have you raced a 5K?
Yep.
Shoot, it's over before you know it.
Right.
Right. And I just lie to myself, like, okay, you're on
Totally.
the starting line of a 5K.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just run a 5K. And
Yep.
once again, you're manipulating your brain. And I think part of running is manipulating your brain.
Well, and I love that. And that's also why sometimes I hate the 3 loop course because you see, oh, this is mile 20. It's like,
Yes. Oh yeah, that's rough.
it works the reverse.
Even the out and back sometimes when you're going
Yeah.
out and you're on mile 1, you see mile 12, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh gosh.
Oh, it's just painful at that point. So, okay. So let me throw in a couple more because we're almost
Yeah.
done is, uh, take a marker and write a message on your hand.
Oh man.
Again, this is almost going back to like this mental. This is interesting how we're really got a lot of tips in this direction, and it's funny actually. I always thought, oh no, I'm above that. Well, when Laura Sedell was here, she actually said that's what she does. And I'm like, oh well, if Laura does it,
It's
I'm
good
going to
enough.
do
For,
it.
it's good enough for one of the best pro triathletes in the world. It's good
That's
enough for me.
right. That's right. And so actually what I think it does is it just sort of gets that mind, again, it's affirmation. It's like, okay, run with a purpose or whatever the message is, but now you've marked it on you and now it's in your it's you're just really trying to convince yourself that you can do it.
So one of the ones I heard, was another pro triathlete talking about it, was they wrote on their arm the amount of miles they've ridden in the last year,
Oh
and
wow.
the amount of run miles they've done in the last year.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
just an affirmation, hey, you have ridden
yeah,
9,000 miles this year.
yeah, yeah,
Like you got this. Like you've done the work,
yeah,
right? Don't do that if you didn't train.
yeah.
Hey, you
That's
ran
such a-
100 miles this year and you're going to do an Ironman. Don't write that down.
Oh, my longest run was only 2 miles.
Exactly. But if you've truly done the work,
Yeah.
like that's a nice little thing to have on your arm or even on your bike
Yep.
stem, right? Like just something like that. Like, listen, like you've done the work.
All right. Well, next speaking, we've talked about this a little bit. I always like to review my training log the night before. All right. So here's one that you'll appreciate though. Be healthy, no injuries on start line.
Yep.
That's gonna
Whatever
give
it
you,
takes to get to the start
yep,
line healthy.
that's going to give you the best odds of having a great race.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And John, obviously we both have struggled with that to a certain extent in our careers. And it's hard because you can't always, right? You might get sick. You might,
Mhm.
you might crush your toe,
Yep.
but yeah, that should always be, it should be the goal, like 3-4 weeks out, start to think about that. Like, what can I do to stay healthy? If I've learned nothing from this COVID-19 and my situation in Oregon, getting sick, is maybe 2-3 weeks before a race, even post-COVID, a few years from now, I'm going to start wearing a mask in public places.
Yeah, right, right.
Definitely on a plane. I'm going to be wearing a
Hmm.
mask anytime I race
Hmm.
and I'm flying somewhere. I'm wearing a
Hmm.
mask. It's just, why not?
No,
It's not like you'll be ostracized in society anymore if you're doing it.
no, and I think we've gotten much better, even though I still have a habit of touching the
Oh yeah,
hands
me
to
too.
the
I'm doing it the
face.
whole time we're
Yeah.
talking. Yeah.
I can do it at home, but once I'm out, I really try to consciously
Yep.
avoid doing that. And so be healthy, not only from a physical injury, but also from catching some type of virus or bug.
Yep.
And then, you're going to have and then use all these tips Not all at once, but
No, once again, this was once again just like little toolkits. We don't all do all of these things every time,
yeah.
especially like the mental things. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. But I always run the tangents. We'll leave it at that.
Run the tangents. I like it. Well, Ted, this has been fun. We covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah. So next week we have a special guest.
Yes, Dr.
So,
Hertland.
Dr. Hertland for next week, and we're going to be talking about relationships in triathlon.
Yeah.
Or relationships in general.
That's right. Yeah. Well,
So that'll be fun.
We'll get some tips that we can use for we can pass on to our wives.
Exactly.
All right. Hey, Ted, this was fun. Good talking.
Yep. Thanks, John. And thanks to everybody for joining in. It's always makes it more fun.
Yes, definitely. Thanks for the comments. Okay. See ya.